Do 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 do. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to the March 19th, 2026 edition of Brainage World. As always, we are in cooperation with the one, the only Voltage Wise. The music that I hummed at the start of today's show means only one thing, that March Madness is here. So today, I'm going to be going through the entire tournament bracket. I know this can be tough to listen to on audio, so if you want to follow along on video, make sure you go over to the Brandon's World YouTube page where I'll be screen sharing and breaking down to you the entire bracket. With that in mind, if you are watching on video, this is the paper bracket that I have filled out, the official Brandon's World 2026 March Madness bracket that I will be copying over to digital for it to be better for us to keep track. I do feel like this year, I would do a spoiler alert, there are going to be less upsets, I think, overall in the tournament. I am struggling to find that one Cinderella team that could make even a Sweet 16 run, let alone an Elite 8 or a Final Four run. I think that and we talked about this last week with David Profusik on the show, the way the NIL has sort of transformed college basketball, and we have stars like Peterson at Kansas, Carlos Boozer at Duke, Caleb Flemings, you know, this chess guy at BYU. I think we're going to have less upsets in the tournament this year than ever before. So let's get into it now. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, you can follow along with the screen share. If you're listening on audio, I'm going to try to narrate the bracket the best I can. I only really do fill out one bracket that I call my main bracket every year. I'll play around with some upset brackets, and I've been playing around really with some AI generated brackets based off of different prompts. But this will be my main bracket. So to start it off, we're going to go to the East region. Then we will go to the South region. We'll finish the entire left-hand side. Then we'll do the right-hand column with the West and the Midwest. So Duke over Siena, I think that is pretty obvious. Ohio State has played well to end the year. They played Michigan tough in the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament. I like Ohio State to win their first uh, NCAA tournament game in years and match up against Duke in the second round. St. John's, led by Jen Calipari, I thought they were eliminated a little bit too prematurely last year. They bring back most of the same talent. They're a very talented team. I think they match up well against Northern Iowa. And then I'll take Kansas over CA Baptist. My first upset of the tournament, I'm going to have South Florida, who's a really good three-point shooting team. I have them defeating Louisville, who has not played well to end the season. I think this is the first upset here. I'll take South Florida. And then Michigan State and Tom Izzo, they have played really well down the stretch. I think that Michigan State's an overall good team. I'll take them there to win and match up against South Florida. UCLA UCF. This is a spot where I could see, UCF potentially pulling an upset, but I do think that UCLA, if you see the preview here on the left hand bar, you can see that, UCLA is pretty much a 6.5 point favorite. They score the ball a lot better. They have more overall talent, in my opinion. So I'm going to take UCLA to win here, and then I'm going to take UConn over Furman. So in the East region for the first round, I really only have one upset, and that being South Florida over Louisville. You go to the second round, I think Duke will knock off Ohio State, and I think the Peterson drama will lead to an early exit for Kansas. I have Duke taking on St. John's in the Sweet 16. And then I do not have South Florida moving on to the Sweet 16. I'm going to have Michigan State take on UConn. So in my Sweet 16 in the East region, I have a 1 versus 5 and I have a 2 versus 3. And I think the matchup we're going to get is 2 versus 5. I think UConn knocks off Michigan State. I think UConn in the Big East, where they have not been as dominant as they were in years past. I think they're motivated. I think that they are a sweeper team in this tournament. And I think St. John's is playing at a lot better level than Duke. Duke has made me nervous, especially with the way they played against Virginia, who is an odd team nonetheless. But Duke, I can't really trust. Yes, Boozer is there, and they have all the talent in the world. But under this John Schneider regime, every time it feels like you try to trust Duke, they let you down. So I don't think that Duke even makes the Elite Eight. I have St. John's taking on UConn, and I think UConn is representing the East in the Final Four. Let's move down to the South region. Florida will take on either Prairie View or Lehigh. Doesn't matter who wins that game. I'll take Florida. I'm gonna take Iowa here, who I thought has played well in the Big Ten. You know, they're right up there with Nebraska and Michigan State and Purdue, along with Michigan. I think Clemson has struggled a little bit this year in the ACC. I think this is where Iowa can upset Clemson in that 9-8 range. Now, Vanderbilt against McNeese. This was a really tough one. I know a lot of people like McNeese. I think Vanderbilt, if you take a look at the preview here that ESPN has, it's a 11.5 point spread. Vanderbilt to me is clearly, I mean, Tyler Turner, Duke Miles are two of the best teams in the country. Vanderbilt, they knocked off Alabama this year. They knocked off Kentucky. They're big notable wins. I think they have played well in the SEC. And I don't think there is a storybook run for McNeese this year. I feel the same way about Nebraska that I do about Michigan State in the Big Ten, so I'll take them to knock off Troy. And then you have this is a spot where a lot of people think upset, right? That VCU could upset North Carolina. I think obviously the Caleb Wilson factor and the injury plays a factor. I think North Carolina is just such a good school. It's a school where you don't doubt them. It's a blue blood. I don't see them losing around one game. Penn knocked off Yale to upset them in the Ivy League tournament. I don't think they can handle Illinois. And then this is where, to me, St. Mary's, Texas A&M, another spot for potential upset. But you look at the spread on this game. It's only a 3.5 point spread, right? But St. Mary's, Poe Muchero's a very good big man, averaging 19 points, 8 rebounds a game. Um, St. Mary's, they ended up knocking off Wichita State this year. They beat Santa Clara, who's also in this tournament. They have a win over Gonzaga. I think they overall had the better resume. I'll take them, and then I'll take Houston, who I do think is on a revenge course this season after being eliminated early the past couple years to knock off Idaho. And then you look at it here. Listen, Florida's a team that I don't trust necessarily too much, but I think against Iowa, their championship pedigree is going to come out. They're going to win. Nebraska, again, I think they've been battle tested in the Big Ten. I think they advance. And then I'll take Illinois. I don't think the North Carolina story lasts for long. And I'll take Houston in a Sweet 16 that sets up a 1-4 and a 2-3 out there in the Southern Conference. And I'll take the top two teams overall. I think these are two teams that can very well win the national championship. In the Elite Eight, you have Florida against Houston. But Florida is the defending national champion. Usually, defending national champions don't get back to the Final Four. I'll follow that logic again this year. And I have the number 2 seed Houston representing the Southern Conference. So I have 2 seed UConn against 2 seed Houston. So two seeds are in the Final Four. We move to the Western bracket. Arizona is a team I love. They're going to have 3 or 4 starters starting in the first round. I think they take out Long Island early. Utah State is a team that's playing very well against the Villanova team without Jay Wright. I don't think they find their footing. Utah State's a team that plays a lot of guards. They have good guard play. They shoot the free ball. They're very efficient defensively. I think Utah State here upsets Villanova. A lot of people think High Point could upset Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin shoots really well from three. Um, I think that they are one of the highest scoring teams Wisconsin's had in the last 40 years. So I'll take them to match up with Arkansas, who I think blows away Hawaii. They're a really good team this year down there in the SEC. Won that SEC tournament for a reason. And then I'm going to take BYU with Diskeska against Gonzaga, the well-rounded Gonzaga. Of course, you have Mark Few there, one of the best coaches in college basketball. That's a phenomenal 6-3 matchup. And then I was really debating hard between Miami and Missouri. Could this be a spot where maybe Missouri, you can see the line here, at 1.5. I mean, this could be a spot. These two teams are so even scoring wise. You look at Miami, their best win this year was against NC State. They do have a win against Louisville. On the Missouri side, they beat Florida. They beat Kentucky. They beat Vanderbilt. But Miami, Florida, I think is a team that's been forgotten about a little bit in that SEC. I think it's really close. I'll take Miami, and then I'll take Purdue. So you look at my bracket here. I only have really three upsets right now in the whole tournament. In the East region, it's the 11th seed South Florida. In the South region, it is 9 seed Iowa. And then in the West region, it's 9 seed Utah State. And I have none of those teams making it to the Sweet 16. So I have Arizona knocking off Utah State. Wisconsin, Arkansas is a really interesting matchup. I just don't trust Wisconsin, their history. I think Arkansas is a really good SEC team. And you look at these Sweet 16 matchups I have. Duke St. John's, Michigan State, UConn. Um, you know, Illinois, Houston, Florida, Nebraska. These are really good matchups, in my opinion, in the Sweet 16. And I'm going to also have then Gonzaga. They will match up against Purdue, who I do think knocks out Miami. But I think Mark Few and Gonzaga is the better coach team here. So I will have Gonzaga taking on Arizona. Again, a Elite Eight matchup here between a 1 and a 3 seed. Arizona against Gonzaga. This is a really tough matchup. You look at the preview for this game. You know, um, yeah, you look at their big wins: Arizona, Florida, UConn, Alabama, BYU, Houston, Gonzaga, Oklahoma, Alabama, Maryland, Kentucky, UCLA, St. Mary's. These are two of the well best coached teams, but I think Arizona's on a mission here. And I do think they, as a 1 seed, will represent the West and get to the Final Four. Finally, I'll take Michigan over either UMBC or Howard in the playing games. I think Georgia's just overall better than St. Louis. I think the NIL program has influenced that basketball program. Texas Tech against Akron. Akron's going to be a trendy pick for an upset. I don't trust Akron to pull off any upsets like I did a year ago. I don't think Holster's got what it takes to upset Alabama, though Alabama has not been playing its best, obviously, um, as they head into the tournament. Miami, Ohio, I like. I just don't like taking playing teams to win the first round. So I'll take Tennessee. Wright State's a nice story out of the horizon. Virginia's been one of the best teams in the ACC all year long. And then Kentucky Santa Clara is interesting. Again, this is one of those situations where Kentucky is such a blue blood there that you look at this spread though. Kentucky's not as good as it used to be in years past. They're only favored by 3.5, but I don't like to go against them at least in round one. And then Iowa State out of the Big 12, I think is one of the most well-rounded, best teams in the country. So in this region, you look at it, I have no upset. So my bracket's going to probably be terrible this year because I have three total upsets in the first round. Now, this is where it could get a little wacky because I will have Michigan defeating Georgia, Texas Tech defeating Bama, and now you have a 1 and a 5 seed matching up in the Sweet 16. I do have Virginia and Iowa State, three first two going at it, but I have Virginia, who again I think has played really well going into the ACC tournament. I think they will take on Michigan in the Elite Eight. This will be a very close back and forth game. You look at obviously I think Michigan's gonna have multiple people drafted this year. They killed Gonzaga, they beat Nebraska, they beat Michigan State. They knocked off Purdue. They played Duke, obviously, close in that neutral site game. I think this is Michigan's best team since the Fab Five team. So I have two one seeds and I have two two seeds. The one seeds play each other, the two seeds play each other. I think that um, Houston is going to take on Arizona in the national championship game, and I have the Arizona Wildcats coming away this year, cutting down the net in the national championship game. We'll do about 142 total points, 73, 71, so 144 total points. Um, and that's my bracket. So again, I don't think there's going to be a lot of upsets this year in the early rounds. I think, you look at the Sweet 16 matchups that I have. Again, Duke St. John's is 1 versus 5. Michigan State UConn is a 3 versus 2. Gonzaga Purdue is a 3 versus 2. Arizona Arkansas is a 1-4. Florida, Nebraska is a 1-4. Illinois, Houston is a 3-2. Virginia, Iowa State's a 3-2. Michigan, Texas Tech is a 1-5. So the lowest seed I have making it to the Sweet 16 is a 5 seed Texas Tech and a 5 seed St. John's. I think St. John's is the only 5 seed that gets to the Elite Eight. Again, I just think that is so much talent right now in college basketball that, could I see TCU, for example, upsetting Ohio State? Yes. Um, could I see UCF upsetting UCLA? Yes, I could. Could I see McNeese maybe upsetting Vanderbilt if the ball drops? Yeah. Same thing with VCU over North Carolina. Same thing with Texas A&M. So I think the South, is where maybe you get those upsets. It's a very tough region, but I think overall, when we get to the Final Four, there's going to be a lot of blue bloods like there were a year ago. But I think it's going to be a very fascinating tournament. I can't wait for it to kick off here at noon Eastern today. If you enjoyed my breakdown of the bracket, let me know down below. This has been Brandon's World on this March 19, 2026. Enjoy the NCAA March Madness tournament. We'll be back next week here on Brandon's World. And peace. Like that clip from the Brandon's World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brandon's World podcast right here on YouTube.